I'm joined by Rich Falcone, CEO of CDI. So we're having this conversation really. CDI is an American company that recently expanded into the UK and set up a UK operation. Just from our own research from our top 100 resellers in the UK, we've noticed that around 12 of them are US based, and there's an increasing sort of prevalence of sort of international companies expanding into the UK market. So Rich, and obviously you expanded into the UK market this year. Can you just sort of talk us through the rationale behind that and why that was a good move for you now?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Josh. Appreciate your time, and CRN as always. So it's a great question. You know, I'd start out by saying this is something our customers have wanted us to do for as long as I can remember. I mean, going back 10, 15 years, you know, CDI would do a global design, and, you know, quite frankly, the customer would be frustrated that we couldn't ship in country, invoice in country, have local people in country, then fly people over the pond to do the work. You know, it just, you know, it was not very clean. We would use freight forwarders. We would, you know, you get into VAT, tax ID, and importer of record issues. I mean, you can do it, but it's sloppy, and sometimes you can't do it. So client side, you know, demand to stick with CDI through the project was the initial driver. So the question becomes, why now? So I'd say there's a couple reasons why now. One, our partnership with One Equity Partners, you know, back in 2019 has really enabled us to do things quicker, faster, a little more agile, and quite frankly, a little more intelligently than before, right? So they really brought sort of an enterprise class, you know, business capability on a global scale, which is some of the business side aspects of you know, doing business internationally. Just took us to a place we really wanted to go, and now we're here, which is great. So thank you to One Equity for that. Number two, objectively, if I go back 10 years, definitely, you know, 10 years definitely, and even 5, a lot of the professional service work we were doing was tied to hardware, right? I mean, the lion's share of it. I mean, a physical piece of hardware. So even though we could build and ship in country, every single engineer would have to fly over to touch the switch, right? Touch the storage device. So two things, our traditional vendors, whether they be Dell or Cisco, I mean, obviously VMware has always been software, but they're the ones sort of software defining things like the network and a lot of the automation stack, but even the backup infrastructure. I mean, companies like Rubrik, and I mean, things that used to just be only hardware are now 100% software. So the reality of that is, even if I look at the stateside aspect of CDI, we're in 29 states right now in terms of our engineering talent is in 29 of the 50 states, right? We used to be in maybe 6, right? So the reason for that is we've trended much more to software delivery, and it doesn't really matter where that person's sitting, you know, COVID or no COVID, right? Couple that with the sort of digital transformation dynamic that COVID accelerated, us being a huge ServiceNow partner, you know, a ServiceNow elite partner, obviously ServiceNow is software development and delivery. That got us much more into the application space. We recently bought a company called Candoris, which got us into the Salesforce consulting space, as they were a Salesforce elite consultant. So even if you just look at those two examples, ServiceNow and Salesforce, obviously whether that installation was across, you know, Broadway here in the Midtown where I am, or it was in London, odds are our engineer isn't going on site across the street or in London, because software delivery is typically done remote, right? Maybe after the kickoff. So the customer's need and or desire to have us physically be there is sort of a lot less important than it used to be. And what they really want is someone who actually knows what they're trying to drive from a transformational perspective and can actually deliver it. And they don't really care if that person's sitting across the street or across the pond. They just want that software off the shelf, out of the box, operationalized, adding value to the business and getting a return on the investment that they've made, because, you know, brokenware or shelfware, or, you know, those are the terms we use. We ran a campaign last year called the C in CDI. It's for consumption. You know, little cheesy maybe, but customers are frustrated with integrators, whether they be overseas or here in the States, that sell them all this great software from VMware and ServiceNow and Salesforce and Dell, Rubrik and Pure and Cisco, and then they don't know how to implement it. And they try to be a professional services company, but they're really not. Or the vendor tries to be one and they're really not. And that software just sits on the shelf. And then guess what? 3 years later, who's back for that renewal and wants to sell you more modules? That initial integrator or that initial, you know, captive, you know, vendor sales rep. And customers are tired of that. And they want that software operationalized because everything's software defined. So, you know, long-winded way of saying we're in a software-driven world, and it's made global expansion a lot easier than it used to be. coupled with the fact that CDI, quite frankly, just, matured into a global organization with one equity. And, we have local people now. We partnered with Adam Kemp, who we knew for the last 10 plus years from his prior days at Richardson Ireson, where we had worked with him. So we got some great local presence. And it's really just been a great experience for our customers, whether it be, the traditional hardware implementation, which we're still doing, or, what is growing and growing and growing and growing, which is software service delivery.
Okay, fantastic. So your UK presence at the moment, is that mainly to deliver on that hardware side? So you have the logistics and you have the ability there to have sort of feet on the ground to deliver, on-site support, for hardware and devices and all that stuff. Is that the main reason why you have the UK presence at the moment? Because you could just service UK customers from the US, I suppose, if it's all software driven.
Yeah. So I mean, to your point, there is still a hardware aspect to our business, and we don't want to be flying people over the ocean to install a catalyst switch or a power store from EMC. So you do need some presence to do the hardware work, and also the customer relationship side of things, and the pre-sale side of things, and the architecture side of things, and just general customer service. So it's great to have that locally, but you don't need, in my personal opinion, I'll just use an example. If you want to be, a $30 million ServiceNow integrator, you don't need to be perfectly balanced where $15 million of your resources are here and $15 million are here, or, wherever you're in 3 regions using 10, 10, and 10. It just doesn't matter, right? You're just going to put the best person on the code and on the project and in the development cycle that you can find that's going to service your customers' needs, because the customer's not going to care where they live. Also, I mean, I don't want to underestimate the simple things, right? I mean, also expanding globally means real things like tax IDs and VAT IDs and importer of record and invoicing in local currency and all that. I don't want to call it the simple stuff, but that is a big limiting factor for a lot of integrators that are 50, 200, 300, $400 million. Even if somehow, England and New York City were right next to each other, they have a hard time incorporating and getting through the business side of it, right? And that's something that held us back for a long time, and fortunately doesn't anymore.
Okay, great. And like has this always been something that makes sense for you to be an international company? Has this like even if like you were to do this 10 years ago when things were more hardware dominated, would it have still made sense back then? Or has time and how the industry changed make more sense?
Look, we're an East Coast. Our clients are typically headquartered out of the East Coast. Not in every case, but a lot of them. See, I grew up in New York City, right? So we have global clients. Most of our clients have counterpart offices overseas. It's not like some of them do, right? And it's almost all of them, right? So this has always made sense for our business. Objectively, it's long overdue. I would have loved to have done this 10 years ago. We would have saved our customers a lot of frustration. You can't look in the rearview mirror. You can't have rearview mirror syndrome. So looking at the front windshield, I'm glad it's here now. But yeah, it always made sense, and that's one of the reasons we're so excited that it's here today.
Yeah, great. And like how come you never pursue like a partnership model? We heard that some UK companies, to fulfill stuff in the US, maybe they partnered with another reseller or another partner over there. Did you ever consider that? And
Sure.
Why was that not the right move for you?
Yeah, no, we considered it. We tried it. We found some great partners, some good people. Everyone had good intentions. It doesn't scale, doesn't work. The customer gets frustrated. You're going to hit some issue. It's going to work for 4/5 of the project and not 5/5. There's going to be some currency issue. It just doesn't work. I mean, we I don't want to use their names, but we partnered with some good people at some good companies, competitors of ours over there. Actually, Adam, who now is president of CDI International, he ran Richardson Ireson, and that worked out great. But then Adam sold that business, and then I can't remember quite frankly who he sold it to. But when he sold it, guess what? Partnership fell apart. So you know what I mean? It doesn't scale. It just doesn't scale. Like one deal here and there, sure. Vendor list issues. And gotta be honest, the customers hate it. I mean, nobody really likes that model.
And I do see the UK market as a gateway into the rest of Europe. A lot of sort of US companies see the UK as somewhere where you can trade into the rest of mainland Europe, for example. Is that something that you're looking to do, to sort of expand further outside of the UK, or maybe service customers in other parts of Europe too?
Well, the 2 offices are in England and Ireland, and we've been doing business. Even again, it wasn't the most optimal way, but we've been doing business in Amsterdam for a long time, just in a model that wasn't optimal for our clients, right? We've been doing VBlock deployments in Amsterdam for 10 years. So yeah, the EU in general, I'd say is I don't want to oversimplify a very complicated topic, but from our perspective, we sort of look at the EU. We don't necessarily say Amsterdam, Ireland. You know what I mean? And maybe we're crazy for thinking about it that way, but that's how we think about it. You know, with that said, Adam is based out of London, and again, the offices are in London and in Ireland.
Okay, great. And of course, you know, Brexit sort of happened at the start of the year. That didn't put you off wanting to expand into the UK market at all. That wasn't something. Obviously, you know, you have an Ireland presence as well now, but like with Brexit happening, that didn't make the UK a less attractive market for you.
No, I mean, we spent a lot more money with KPMG and our tax advisors and our consultants, but it didn't slow us down. No, I mean, look, you know, that's no, I mean, that's just a hurdle you got to kind of figure out how to jump, but had absolutely no impact on our desire to the way we view or our desire to expand into that market. I mean, I'm really simplifying things here, but you know, in America, every state has its own tax code, right, and its own tax rate and its own. Yeah, I could drive 20 miles from here and the tax laws are totally different than they are here. And the way we have to tax our customers is different in every state. So, I mean, every time we send out an invoice, they got to look at what state it's in because it's a different tax rate in every state. And, you know, so I guess to us, it's just like, you know, another state. I don't know. I don't know. We didn't think about it that way.
That's interesting. I guess getting the US perspective, you know, the fact that you have different taxes, like you say, in each state, whereas in the UK, you know, people are very much used to dealing with sort of similar laws everywhere. So I guess that's quite an interesting difference.
Yeah, I mean, sales tax, income tax. People, as I'm sure you know, leave states to go live in other states because of tax rules. So, I mean, I obviously, you know, there's the currency dynamic. It's different currencies, but I mean, I don't really see that as a limiting business issue. You know, to do a currency conversion.
And like, is there more to your sort of UK expansion rather than just looking after your sort of current US customers? Are you planning on new customer acquisition and sort of, you know, really growing your presence in the UK market through organic acquisition of customers?
Yeah, no, look, so Adam got the band back together and, you know, the old sales reps and his old CTO and 100% looking to acquire new customers organically. And also, you know, I'd be very open to acquisition in the UK. I mean, to your point, CDI has been approached numerous times by, you know, large and successful EU integration firms who would love to acquire CDI or partner with CDI. And that's not something, you know, we're currently interested in doing. But we'd be interested in doing the reverse of that, which would be, you know, if we found the right partner, like we did with High Availability and Candoris and Plan B and Kintyre and P5, if we found that overseas, of course that would make sense, right? But honestly, you know, having done a lot of mergers and acquisitions and integrations the last couple of years, the culture would need to align, right? Without that, it's the whole initiative. It wouldn't make any sense. But yeah, so organic and inorganic growth, I think is critical. I mean, look, you know, I think that at the end of the day, you know, IT's changed a lot, and the issues and challenges that, you know, CTOs have in a multi-cloud, digitally driven, software-defined operating model are different than they used to be. And in my humble opinion, there's a talent shortage to solve those issues, and we see people sort of starving for the talent they need to accomplish modern day IT outcomes. And this is just, again, my personal, you know, conviction that it is so much less important to someone where the person is sitting, especially post-COVID. I mean, you know, you're on video, but I'm going to be on video all day today with people that are 10 miles from me. So I just think where someone is versus their capability, obviously that's always mattered, but I think more than ever, people just want the right talent on the other end of the screen or on the keyboard, you know, installing the software and doing what they got to do. So with that, you know, that makes global expansion easier, in my opinion, because I think there's less of a focus on where you are versus what you can do.
Yeah. But with the skills that you've picked up recently, obviously, you know, the ServiceNow capabilities you have and all that kind of stuff, how does that play into UK business? Obviously, that means that you can use those abilities you have in the US to service your clients in the UK. Is that quite an advantage to have? You know, the fact that you're this massive company with these skills you can transfer to the UK market?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way I'd answer that is typically, you know, back in the day, right? If the stateside entity wanted to buy an EMC array, but the EU, you know, division felt, you know, whatever, NetApp Pure was the right solution, they didn't really have to match. I mean, like sometimes they did for replication, of course, if they were talking to each other, but you know, there was many, you know, use cases where customers would just not agree with themselves, and one division would buy one and one would buy that, and they had the autonomy to do that, right? And whether, you know, one believed in one firewall and one in the other, because they sort of operated, you know, that physical hardware in a silo, again, except for replication. And obviously the network. I mean, don't get me wrong, things had to align, but I could tell you countless stories where two teams didn't agree and bought, competing products, you're probably not going to roll out like a CRM solution or a CSM solution or an ITOM or an ITSM solution or, risk compliance solutions or HR onboarding, offboarding. You're probably not going to do 2 rollouts of software-driven ServiceNow, Salesforce type, rollout. And then you're going to have your users, when they fly over the pond, your end users, the people on your business side of the house, they're going to have 2 different service portals when they want to take a day off, or when they want to have an HR conversation, or they want to, order IT infrastructure through the ITOM, or ticketing. I mean, no one's going to do that, right? So for the most part, those are global rollouts, and therefore back to the globalization conversation, it just makes sense. So 100% ServiceNow rollouts global, Salesforce rollouts global, and again, a lot of the traditional infrastructure stack. Now that it's software defined, I mean, people tend to, I don't want to say agree more, but there's less of these turf wars of, the color orange versus the color blue, and, one picks one and one picks the other. So the rollouts in general are just more consistently global in the software defined world, especially with companies like ServiceNow and Salesforce.
That's it. And just from your vendors as well, are they encouraging you to become more international as well as your customers? Does it sort of work for your vendors if you're in the UK as well as the States?
I should caveat this answer by saying I love our vendors and they're great to CDI. But I think, outside of the global accounts, right? Obviously Citibank's going to have one account team, and I'm sure they're covered seamlessly. But a lot of accounts, a lion's share of them, I'd say, middle market, kind of lower end enterprise accounts, they get assigned 2 teams. And there's commission wars that go on between the 2. I mean, anyone who's been in the industry and sort of the guts of the industry knows exactly what I'm talking about. And you'll get 2, Cisco teams, 2 Dell teams, 2 VMware teams, 2 whatever. Sort of like, they're working together, but they're fighting over money, and they're fighting over commission and which architect's in charge, and the customer's kind of caught in the middle until they get to a certain size, and then they're sort of given this global coverage model. And honestly, I mean, that's where the customers love the integrators, because for a variety of reasons, depending on how you're running your business, we don't have to do that. I mean, we've never done that at CDI. We just have an account owner, whether it's Citibank or, a 40-person law firm. There's going to be one person in charge of that account from an account management perspective, and then his supporting team. So I think that, the vendors, I wouldn't say they encourage it. I mean, because they almost, it adds even more confusion to them, because now you've got an American-based, integrator doing work for an EU customer, and maybe that EU account team for the vendor doesn't want that. They want their local. So it's interesting. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that it's all seamless and everybody, it's all hugs and kisses, and there's politics involved in covering things and revenue recognition. I mean, people want the revenue in their bank, right? So I wouldn't say look, at a corporate level, would they tell you they want their partners to be global? Of course they would. You want to have a real conversation in the actual street deal. It's not that simple. I mean, it's just not that simple, in my opinion.
Okay. And how do you see the sort of general landscape at the moment? Do you feel like most partners or most solution providers out there are doing enough for their customers? Think customers are sort of happy with the level of service they're getting at the moment? And like, how does the industry need to adapt further to capture new opportunities?
Yeah.
In the market?
So, I want to be respectful of our competition. There's some great businesses out there. I'll just tell you that, we've got, over 100 sales reps, and we all are on the same Teams channel, and, talking QBRs, and it gives you some pretty good feedback. And the feedback I get from the sales team and from our delivery team, therefore from our customers and the ones I talk to directly, I would, quite frankly, confidently say that the customers have never been more dissatisfied with the level of service they're getting. And, we ran a campaign last year called, breaking up with your integrator is hard to do. And it is, because, I mean, it was a Valentine's Day campaign, but, you've known someone 10, 20 years, they're a great person, you have a great relationship. I get it. I mean, that's part of life, it's part of business. But I think what's happening is, those people who have those, long-standing relationships, which are great, they're saying no a lot more than they used to. So can you do this? No. Can you software define my network? Can you set up my service portal? Can you roll out my ITSM strategy? Can you install ServiceNow and hook it into VMware, whether it's going on-prem or off-prem for that workload, and then, help me manage it in Amazon, Azure, or on-prem? No, yes, right? And we're back 10 years ago. Can you install this Cisco switch? Can you install this? Yeah, I guess, that's what we do. So I think that customers are getting told no more than they wish they were. A lot of people say, I don't need any new friends, or, I like but the reality is, there's, we've had a lot of new logos open and a lot of share shifting, because I just think it's getting difficult for certain integration business models to, maintain themselves as the world becomes more software driven and digitally driven and multi-cloud and automated and things like that. So, I mean, just, I like to be a straight shooter, no, I don't think the customers are as satisfied as they used to be with their integrator community. And I think it's a great opportunity for great companies, and there's many of them, to thrive in that sort of Darwinistic reality.
Okay. And like why is that? Why are a lot of partners, not able to invest in the skills that they need to in order to have their customers covered? Is it because companies like yourselves are getting loads of sort of private equity investment, and it makes it harder for them to compete with the likes of you, or what's sort of going on there, do you think?
Well, I do think we're hitting a scale reality in our paradigm, right? I do think that, I mean, don't get me wrong, you can be a $40 million integrator and be great, and there's plenty of them out there. But I do think it's getting increasingly expensive and increasingly difficult to retain and recruit top talent. And that top talent typically wants options when it's in an organization technically. Maybe they're an ace ServiceNow engineer, but they want to get their hands on Salesforce or vice versa, or they're really good with VMware, but they want to get some some Jenkins experience. And it's just when you only have that limited service catalog, and it's a very difficult recruiting time. There's sort of a starvation of talent. It's just hard to recruit and retain at a certain size. I think that's one thing. I think the vendors, our partners, don't want more partners. So, I mean, I hear rumors, I don't know if they're true or not, ServiceNow closed its partner program. I don't know if that's actually true or not. That's what I hear. So, I think the vendors also want, I mean, this is one thing, like, at least in country, the vendors want less people to deal with, right? So they like the defragmentation. I would just, honestly, it's just more the hurdle rate, the investment rate, the time to revenue for some of this stuff. You're not just, here's another example. I mean, you're not just signing up a hardware vendor and then, 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, 2 weeks later, taking down a $20 million deal. I mean, these software projects are delivered by the hour, right? They can take years. It's just a different business model. So I just think, and honestly, Salesforces have a hard time adapting. The actual salespeople, right? You've really got to be conscious of rearview mirror syndrome. And is your sales team capable of, I always say when I interview you guys, like, change or die, but it's true. I mean, like, our selling motion, the type of account manager we have is different than we used to have. The type of project manager is different, and we've moved to mostly agile. All this stuff adds up. You've got to have a changing culture, and that's not for everybody. So you add all that together, and you kind of get now. With that said, here's the beauty part of it, right? Still some really good people with some great relationships, and that's where I think strategic combinations make sense, right? And then sort of overnight, you solve a lot of these capability gaps, and you can say yes more than you were saying no. And you still are, you're still a trusted advisor. You still have 20 years of trust. That's like, it's hard to replicate that. So I think that's where the strategic combinations make a lot of sense. And the customers love it. I mean, truly, they want to keep working with the individual they've been working with for 20 years that's earned their trust. And they just need that person to have the right arrows in the quiver to solve their modern day challenges. And as long as they do, they're probably going to stick with that person. And that's where, M&A makes a lot of sense. Combination makes a lot of sense.
Fantastic. Well, that's all the time we've got, I'm afraid, for this session. But thanks so much for joining me. It's been really good talking to you, and it's been really interesting, hearing your insights about, why you've come over to the UK market. So yeah, it's been really great. Thanks so much for your time.